Waiters, what Valentine Day disasters have you witnessed? Old man proposed to old woman. He tried to get off the chair to kneel, tripped and fell, and I assume broke something, since he couldn't get back up, and we had to call an ambulance. My manager had to drive her teeth to the hospital separately, because she had take them out to eat a soup, Lord knows why, and left them on the table in the confusion. Not a waiter, but I was a pastry chef at this big resort in Cape Cod. We got a special order from this guy, who was coming in for his anniversary, Valentine's Day. He wanted his dessert to have, "Will you marry me?" written on it, so he could pop the question when it came out. He called ahead to the front and back kitchen, even came in himself that morning to make sure it was good to go. The whole crew was behind him. We had cooks all night coming in the ask if it had happened yet. I wrote the inscription on the plate and dressed it to the nines with gold leaf and expensive chocolate. I'm taking a picture of the plate just before it's set to go out and notice our head waiter come in with a weird look on his face. He says plainly they don't need it. She broke up with him before the entrees hit the table. I worked at a pretty high-end Mediterranean bistro. My second Valentine's there. It was probably the busiest night I've ever worked as a server. We had reservations that booked basically the entire restaurant including the bar and patio from 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. No walk-ins were to be seated unless a reservation was cancelled or someone with a reservation didn't show up. Most of the customers were pretty understanding and either waited or simply left. One dude however kept pushing and pushing, asking every 10 minutes how much longer until he is seated, constantly saying how he is a regular customer and how his date is going to be there at 7. He got there at 6. We insisted that once a table was available and all the customers before him were seated, he would get a table, but because the amount of reservations we couldn't guarantee he would even get a table at all. At about 6:50 the guy loses it, fast walks up to the hostess stand where the reservation book is, grabs the reservation book and practically runs out the front door. Now everything is going to complete shit because the only copy of the reservations for the night that is barely half over is gone. Two of the owners ran outside to follow the guy and try and get the book back, but by the time they got out he had already left the parking lot. Even better is, 2 hours later, chaos is still running rampant and the dude shows back up saying he has a reservation for 2. All 5 of the owners, all brothers, escorted the dude and his date out to the parking lot and banned him from the restaurant permanently. They even took a picture of him and posted it in the window saying, "Do not serve this man. TL. Dr. Salty dude without reservation steals reservation book and then tries to come back later." A couple sitting at the bar were enjoying their night out. The man got up from his bar stool and left for the bathroom. As his girlfriend was alone and absolutely wasted at the bar, a random woman approached and revealed that she recently matched with the woman's boyfriend on Tinder and had hooked up a week earlier. The drunk girlfriend refused to believe this story, so the woman showed her his Tinder profile and their conversation. The boyfriend returned to a drunk, sobbing and screaming girlfriend. I felt like I was watching a reality TV show. It was incredible. The poor girl was basically carried out of the bar by her boyfriend of 3 years whom she just discovered has been cheating on her for who knows how long. It was the most dramatic moment I have ever experienced, and it was absolutely none of my business. Edit. I was a bar back at the time and this couple sat directly in front of the place I spend most of my time, the glass washing station. Edit 2. For those wondering how the woman knew the couple was in a long-term relationship, I really don't know. My guess is she figured it out the same way I did, based on listening, body language and the fact that this woman was overly touchy and liberal with cheek kisses and such. It was fairly obvious. Regardless, she approached out of concern and curiosity and she succeeded in outing the guy, which resulted in a very upsetting scene. I was working at a corporate sports bar that specialized in chicken wings. V-Day, like most days, was insanely busy. As the evening winds down, someone calls in saying they're a professional food critic and demanded to speak to the manager. After a 15-minute call, the manager tells us the critic rated us a B and said the food was good, but the service sucked. He said he would leave that last part out of his review if we comped his meal and gave him vouchers for free meals in the future, but he refused over and over to say where he worked. Confused, the manager talked to the server, who confirmed that the guy ate alone, ran her around ragged while shamelessly hitting on her, and left 0 tip. He wrote his phone number on the tip line. Thirsty bitch wanted free food because the server didn't call him immediately for a date. Back when I served food at one of those super touristy seafood restaurants, I worked a Valentine's Day double shift. For lunch, this younger couple came in celebrating their 1-year anniversary. I offer my congratulations and proceed to do my usual spiel before taking orders. The girl is looking more and more dismayed the longer I talk. Finally I get to the end and ask if there are any allergies. She looks directly at her boyfriend and states, "Yes, I'm allergic to fish and shellfish." Then looks over at me very sad. I made sure every aspect of her meal was fine for her. But it was that look of "we've been dating a year and he still takes me to a restaurant that could kill me" that really did it for me. Not waitstaff, but I used to work front desk at a hotel. One Valentine's Day I was working the night shift, and this woman comes down with a cut above her eye looking like she just went a few rounds in the ring with a boxer. Woman starts sobbing and asks us to call the coos, which we do immediately. Turns out this girl's boyfriend just beat the shit out of her during a fight, and from what I could tell this probably wasn't the first time. So after the cops show up and haul the dude off, my manager offers her a different room on campus. We need to leave the guy's stuff where it is for him to pick up the next day. She accepts, and I go up with the woman to help her collect her stuff and move to the new room. There were a bunch of bottles of alcohol in the room, and she donated them to the front desk staff. I got a bottle of Hypnotic and some vodka. Manager got a bottle of Patron. Cherry on top of everything, the dude's wife called later that night saying someone had stolen his card as he was out of town on a business trip. Never one to defend an abuser. I told her where she could find her husband. Fun times. Nothing too scandalous, but I'd say happy Valentine's Day pretty much to any couple that sat at my tables. Occasionally one of them would say something like "we are not dating." Some of the times, the other person would give a look that pretty much confirmed that they both had very different interpretations of what was going on. There's an episode of 30 Rock where they mention that going to IKEA is a big stress test in relationships. That has nothing on going to a restaurant on the busiest days of the year, particularly Mother's Day and Valentine's, especially when it's on a weekend. I'd say 99% of the disasters I've seen have just been normal run-of-the-mill issues where couples realize they have different levels of patience, and one person undoubtedly gets aggravated with the packed restaurant and their time is ruined. Happened to my poor co-worker. A guy and his date came in for Valentine's Day. They had a great time, ate a lot of food, drank a lot of wine, and got along really well with my co-worker, who was their server. About 2 months later they come back in and request my co-worker again, who happily says yes to serving them. He goes up and greets them. The guy introduces his wife to him, and my co-worker mentions something about how much he enjoyed serving them on Valentine's Day. They go quiet. Wife gets up and leaves. Guy just lowers his head. Turns out he had brought his mistress in on Valentine's Day, but my co-worker didn't realize he was with a different woman this time around, so didn't think anything of it. We never saw the guy again. I was a waitress many moons ago, and two couples spring to mind. The first were an older couple who were dressed nicely. They were polite and cordial to me, but not overly enthusiastic or friendly. They were at the table for a little over an hour and a half, and we didn't see them say one word to each other during that time. Every time I went over to their table, the atmosphere felt like I'd walked straight into an argument, but they weren't speaking or looking at each other or anything. It very quickly became awkward as fuck. The second couple was meant to be having a proposal dinner. The guy had rung to book a table and had let us know he was going to propose during dessert. He'd given the ring to kitchen staff so we could bring it out with a cake, and he'd got some balloons and streamers too. Anyway, he walks in a couple of steps behind his partner. Everyone has big grins for them both, but he grits his teeth and shakes his head, surreptitiously dragging his finger across his throat pantomime style. Great. Oh, and lucky me, they're seated in my section. It's obvious she was bloody furious with him about something. She spends the first half of the meal seething quietly, and the second having a constant pop at him. While she was in the loo, the manager made me double check he didn't want us to bring the ring out or anything. "Fuck, no," was his response. I felt really bad for him, she really was mean. Not my story, but a coworker, which happens to be my cousin, told me this story. One day a guy enters the taco restaurant where we worked at. He was a waiter, so he goes on to bring the menu to the table. The guy, 20-ish, says he's waiting for someone, so he's gonna wait to order a full meal, but as waiters we are taught to insist a little more and sell something. So the guy finally orders the cheapest item on the menu, a small carne asada taco, just one. A few hours went by, the dude's date still hadn't arrived, and every 20 or so minutes he would order another one of those small tacos. Eventually the owner of the place, who is a really cool dude, and has been a friend of my family for years, tells the waiters, "LMAO, look at this poor sucker, if the girl never arrives, I'll pay for everything he has ordered myself." So another hour and a half goes by and this dude finally gives up, and asks for the check. He looked pretty sad, so as a waiter of his age, my cousin told him everything he consumed was on the house. He smiled and left good tips anyway. Stay strong guys, or gals, if she/he has you waiting that long, she/he's probably not worth it anyways.